Hello and welcome to my Final Fantasy II review. I'll be reviewing the Final Fantasy II version that didn't make it out of Japan in its original NES/Famicom version and only got its US release with the PlayStation, later the GBA and the PSP. I will be talking about the GBA version, which a lot of people discuss as being the best one in the best of the enhanced remakes. And when I say enhanced remakes, that means essentially the entire game tile by tile is still there, the same gameplay, but there are a lot of bug fixes and obviously the improved graphics. This is a game that was on the NES and we get, full, what is this, 16-bit graphics, whatever the Game Boy Advance was. So we get the full graphics of the Game Boy Advance plus bug fixes on top of the original Final Fantasy II version. Now, I think there are a lot of people that say, hey, like if you play one of the remakes, you're playing the easier version of Final Fantasy II. But usually those same people say, hey, that the remakes still suck, and if you're going to play the remake, play the GBA version. I totally agree with the assessment of playing the GBA version. It actually looks really pretty and plays really well. But yeah, this game gets a lot of hate. One of the reasons why this gets so much hate is because of the leveling up system. So look at my 4 characters here. I have Firion, Marea, Guy, and Layla. One thing that made Final Fantasy II unique was that it had named characters and a real storyline. Not even like the Final Fantasy III, somewhat of a storyline. No. This one has a real storyline with real heroes. The 4th character in this game actually switches out every so often, every few missions, with a different story-relevant character, and so on and so on. But the leveling system is a little bit weird here. You might notice that there's actually not a single class described here on any of the characters. The reason for that is that there's no class system. What the leveling system kind of looks like is more akin to the Elder Scrolls series, and a lot of people will compare these, and it's really funny that these like two very separate game series get this comparison. So what actually happens is that the more you hit somebody with a sword, the stronger you become with that sword. The more you get hit and your HP lowers, the more HP you're gonna have. So whatever it is that you either need, such as defense, HP, or MP, like if you start running out of MP often, you level that up. So whatever you need and whatever you use gets constantly upgraded. This kind of makes for a slightly weird gameplay, but I think it actually still works. One of the problems that people mention is that, hey, if you really want to level up, you have to hit your own character a lot, which you can do, and it does level you up. If I have Firion hitting Marea, or Marea hitting Firion with spells or with attacks while I'm fighting against some low-level goblins, Firion will lose HP, and when he gets, I think, below 50%, he starts gaining experience that he will then get toward HP and level that up. The fortunate thing is that during my gameplay, I have not once encountered this issue. I have not once encountered the need to do and use this mechanic. There's the other thing that even though you don't have a class system, there is like an implied class system. This is actually something that I worried about when I first played the game. Is there going to be an implied knight, and I have to figure out how to, like, what weapons to give him and figure out how to play him in order to fit that stereotype. And there is a little bit of that. I mean, when these characters start for the first time, let's reset the game and I'll kind of try to see if I can play through the first 5 minutes of the game to display that. When you start the game for the first time, let's go ahead and do new game. Oh no, which one do I want to overwrite? That's fine. This is kind of cool too, by the way. Yeah, anyway. Can I get through the cutscenes? Yeah. So we have Firion, Marea, and Guy. Now notice, as I'm dying, and this is part of the story, notice one important thing. Firion has 30 HP, Marea has 20, and Guy has 40. What does that tell you? That tells you that Marea is probably going to be a mage because she has lower health, and if you actually check out her stats, and I think we can do that actually in the next section, you'll notice that she has like a higher intelligence. She's essentially a mage without the game telling you so, and the game telling you, hey, you can play this game however you want to. Meanwhile, Guy has a lot of HP, so he's a tank, and he's a very strong tank, and so you can play him that way. And again, the game implies these things without telling you, and Firion is kind of the balance, meaning that he's like the warrior knight that can attack, but he can also like use you want to put a shield on him, and so on. That was one of the big gripes of this game. But despite all these different issues, these implied classes, the different leveling system, I never found myself in this game having to hit my own characters. I found myself having to grind a lot, but it was totally fine. And I also had a very unique experience that was shaped by my gameplay, because I did play this semi-blind. Like, I haven't played this game before, but I did follow a guide from time to time because I get really easily lost in these games. So, yeah, so what happened was that there were a few times where, let's say, I ran out of MP, and so I decided to teach some of my secondary characters spells and kind of go against their archetype. And I found this to be like a really intriguing and fun gameplay. I really wish I could show it, but, you know, there are these... Well, I can actually show it in one of the other saves. Let's do a reset again. So... Again, leveling system, I think it's not as bad as people think it is. If you do play this game, there might be a grind, but this is the kind of game that you like sit back and grind the game while you're doing other things. You know, if you have a Game Boy Advance, you can just like sit back and while you're like watching TV, essentially press A all the time. And it's still kind of fun. I enjoy the grinding aspect of this game, because if you require grinding in a game, this is something that occurred to me like as I was playing through the Final Fantasy games. If you require grinding throughout the game, and you have an RPG, right, meaning that you not only do you need to go out and fight monsters, but any random monsters that you fight are going to help you, right, like kind of increase your power. It actually sets you up on a journey of exploration. And that, I think, is a super important part of this game, is like, you want to walk around everywhere because you do want to grind. And same goes like descending down into caves. Like, it sucks being halfway through a cave, then having to return to, you know, heal up. But it encourages you to go through every little spot of a cave, because first of all, hidden treasures and stuff, but more importantly, you want to get that grind in. And the most fun way of getting a grind in is by exploring the world. I'm going to just go ahead and say that. I know it's a kind of a controversial thing, but yeah, let me show you how, what my characters look like. So check out, I have Firion, Marea, Guy, and Leon. Leon is a character that leaves your party and comes back way later, spoiler alert, sorry. And yeah, let me go ahead and show you what I've got. So Firion is my dark knight, or my knight. You can see that he has an ample amount of HP, more than Leon, more than Marea, so he's not a spellcaster, but he has an enormous amount of MP anyways. So while he uses like Masamune, which is like the ultimate sword in Final Fantasy games, a flame shield, and then uses ninja armor, you can see that he has a really strong attack, really good accuracy, really good defense, somewhat okay evasion, somewhat okay really good magical defense, but he does not, like, even though he has so much MP and he can cast a bunch of different magic, right? Like, well, he can only cast these two magic. But look, I have Cure 8. This is like a late game Cure. You start with Cure 1 and it takes forever to level up to Cure 8. So the way I played this character was like a knight, like an offensive character. But if I would ever played against somebody who's weak to magic, I had a Blizzard that I could cast. And this happened so often that I upgraded my Blizzard to be like this really high level spell. I also used them to cure. It was great to be able to cure outside of a battle, because you still gained experience for it. So Firion ended up being like another MP store, like another MP reserve. If I was going down a really long cave, I could use Cure to heal my entire party while gaining experience that made him a better MP caster, right? So let's look at Marea real quick. Marea is a similar ordeal. So I never really did any attacks with her, like any physical attacks, and you can see that she has a low physical attack. She has a bow. She doesn't actually attack anything, but MP really is her strength here. So that she did fall into that, you know, into that setup. And this is how I used her. I had Cure 12. I had like all these different spells, and she became like more of a repository of spells for me. you'll see that her Blizzard is actually lower than Furian's, but her Fire is stronger. So I needed like one super strong spell, and then I used a lot of the other ones. Ultima was fixed in the Final Fantasy II remakes, and so this became a really strong spell too. So like, there's so much like stuff that you can do here that'll customize your gameplay. Like Guy became my OP character. Incredible attack, incredible defense, HP that's like double of anybody else, and I have no idea how this even like happened. And magical powers rivaling Marea's, despite me not really using much of it. Well, you can see my Fire is 8, but yeah. And the only reason all this happened is because Marea ran out of MP and I had no way to heal, but I had a bunch of cures that I could teach, and I taught Guy and Furian cure, so I could use their MP to cure my characters. I think that made my gameplay so much more unique, that I essentially had these 4 powerful spellcasters, and 3 of those powerful spellcasters were also very powerful physical attackers. The next thing that people complain about is the the dialogue system, and I don't have a good way to display that. I would have to probably start over again. Ooh, we have a battle. That's awesome. Yeah, so I can't really display that, but essentially the way the dialogue system worked is that if somebody had something to tell you, you would have a different dialogue screen pop up, and in that dialogue screen you could choose between like 20 at the end of the game 20 different keywords, and ask them about those keywords, and they would reply, and you have to find the right keyword that is relevant so that they give you the relevant information, and you learn these keywords from characters as you talk to them. It sounds a little bit complicated, and it sounds maybe more rewarding than it is. It's essentially like you clicking on the last keyword that you learned, or like the last 3 keywords that you learned whenever you talk to a character that is interactive in that way, to learn more information about it. I don't really know why people have such a huge issue with it. Like, it's not entirely intuitive, but it also is not unintuitive. For example, halfway through the game, you destroy a machine called the Dreadnought, right? Like an attacking machine. And after you destroy the Dreadnought, you still have the Dreadnought keyword in your vocabulary. Well, after you finish up the quest and you talk to whoever who's like, hey, oh yeah, you destroyed the Dreadnought, great, let's move on to the next part of the story, you never have to come back to that keyword again. What's cool though is that there is a special library in... ooh, let me go ahead and just cast some of these spells for fun. There's a special library that you can ask all these different keywords, and it'll try to answer every single one of those keywords and tell you what they are, the history of it, and some like extra lore, which I think is such a cool mechanic. I have not played this since March, or since like April, so like in a few months. Hopefully I'm using all the right spells. So I think that addressed all the different gripes, right? The dialogue system, the leveling system, there's a million other things that people mention as being problematic, but there is joy in this game. Oh, you know what? There's one more gripe, and this is my own personal gripe. The dungeons are too long, and the reason I say that is, well, let me go ahead and finish this fight, and you'll see just in a second what the issue is. That was a strong attack. That's funny. Oh, why am I using fire if they're all fire-based? Oh, at least I didn't give them health, right? Alright, so. There we go. So what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so the dungeon, the one thing that a lot of people complain about this game is that the dungeons are extremely long, and they really are. Whenever I played Final Fantasy IV, I was surprised by how, well, Final Fantasy III even, I was surprised how short the dungeons were. In Final Fantasy IV, they still have longer dungeons, but they have the save points where you can save and heal and use a tent and whatever, and give you plenty of items to replenish your health and MP as you go through a dungeon. So you have those 6-7 floor dungeons, and you have a safe spot in the middle. Let me show you something about this game. I'm on the 10th floor of the Pandemonium. I'm on level 10 of this specific dungeon. And, you know, that feels like, oh, final dungeon? That makes sense. Well, let me tell you how how you get to Pandemonium. You have to go through another 5-level dungeon in order to enter this 10-level dungeon. If you want to go back and heal and like do exit, you would have to go through 15 floors of a dungeon without a single safe spot, a single place to heal, a single place to stop and rest. Yeah. 15 levels of hell. And I hated it. I hated this so much. I hated it so much. I was so upset about it. The first time I played this, let's see if I can cast exit actually with her. Do I have it? I have teleport. I'm so glad I finished this. If I had like accidentally overwritten the save, I would have hated it so much. Oh no, 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 I didn't mean to walk in there. Anyway, so 15 levels of hell is what this last dungeon was, and a lot of the dungeons are similar in that they're long mazes, they're very complicated, they're very long, and they're big maps. Like comparing it to Final Fantasy III, Final Fantasy IV, those dungeons are easy in comparison. This is what makes this game extremely difficult, and, you know, it makes it somewhat of a chore to play. But I enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it. So the first time I went into this lake here, which is like the longest dungeon. Oh, do I have access to the map? I should have, right? Isn't it like start B? No, B start? B select? Yeah, there we go. So the first time I played this little mission, I went down through the first dungeon, made it halfway through the second dungeon, and then I teleported out to do other stuff. The cool part about doing that, like teleporting out to do other stuff, was that you don't lose progress. Like, you lose progress in the dungeon, but when you go through the next time, you don't have to go searching around for all the different chests. You don't have to go, you know, looking for special, you know, for secret passages or anything like that. And you have so much more experience. The second time I went through, I made it through the first dungeon in like no time at all. The first time I went through, it took me forever, but the second time, it took no time at all. Yeah, so this is the dialogue system that I was talking about. I can learn this word. That's great. I can ask about all these different words, and I don't even have 20. This is way less. I don't even know where they all went. But you can ask the character all these different... Yeah, and they'll tell you, hey, I have nothing that to tell you about that. I don't know what that is. I don't know who these people are. And then you ask her the right thing, and she'll answer you with some information. So that's the dialogue system. What was I talking about? Yes, so the long dungeons are definitely they are the worst detriment of this game, and they make the game very stressful and very difficult. But you always have teleport, and grinding and leveling is really easy in this game, and that is, I think, like the counterbalance to these long dungeons, is that you can go through halfway through the dungeon. When you teleport, when you come back, the scaling works in such a way that it'll take you very little time to get back to where you were. Now, to give you an overview of all the positive parts, I do think that the leveling system is a positive part. I do believe that the dialogue system is kind of interesting and a positive part. It makes it a little bit more interactive, even though it's kind of like fake interaction. The game is really nice looking. It is beautiful. Like even the Game Boy Advance remake, which people don't really talk about. It is the game that introduces chocobos. Let's see if I can find them. It should be somewhere over here. I remember chocobos were always like in a little forest that was surrounded by a ring of nothing, but I don't believe that's the case in this game. Oh no. Well, that sucks. Can I not defend? I thought I could defend. I guess not. Alright. Yeah, so this game has chocobos, this game has flying airships, which is wonderful. It introduces Sid, which is great. The fighting is not bad. I don't really know why people hate it. You have chocobos here. Let's see, let's get the chocobos. I already said that. And like you can see, this works just how you'd expect a chocobo forest to work in the original fantasy-based Final Fantasy games, which, you know, I'm not talking about like Final Fantasy VII, but Final Fantasy, let's see, 2 through 4 at least, as far as I played it, have a similar mechanic where you keep walking out of the forest by accident. Oh, you always start on the left side. Why didn't I even realize that? I kept walking out by accident. And again, if you can run around really fast with the chocobo and not get any damage. Like, it's just like a fun game. I don't really know like why people hate it so much. You know, I know people recommend Final Fantasy IV, and Final Fantasy IV is fantastic, and I'm playing it right now, and I'm enjoying it, but there's nothing wrong with Final Fantasy II. If you enjoyed Final Fantasy I, this is a different game, like different mechanics, things work differently, depending on which, I guess, Final Fantasy I game you played, but most of the remakes and the original, you know, like this game feels very different. Despite that, it is a worthwhile game to play. The things that people mention as detractors are, I think, its upsides. Long caves are an experience. They're difficult, but if you like grindy games, if you like that sense of achievement, if you like the sense of progress where you get through the... I really do like the system of going halfway through a dungeon, exiting out, and redoing it, just so you can do it this time much stronger and have an easier time. That is totally, you know, that is totally within the realm of this game. I believe this game, does it have ethers? Yeah, this game has readily available potions and ethers, so you can, you know, you can do a regular dungeon crawling adventure with this, meaning that, you know, you fill up on all your potions, you fill up on all your ether, and you go through a really long, difficult dungeon. That's the game. That's this game, and it's wonderful for that. The graphics are nice. The story is actually interesting. You know, not to provide too many spoilers, but you are essentially playing Star Wars in Final Fantasy Land. And yeah, I kind of mean that. You are playing as a rebel against the Empire that is building a super weapon to subjugate and destroy its people. Yep. And one of your characters, who was a Light Knight, becomes a Dark Knight, and they have a redemption arc. No, that doesn't sound like Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker at all. Yeah, Final Fantasy II is a fantasy skin of Star Wars. You heard it here first. I don't know how to explain the chocobos, though. And I guess the airship is kind of like is the Millennium Falcon. I think that's pretty much it. That's all I can really say about this game in terms of my review. I wanted to mainly address the points of like what people didn't like about this game, what people found annoying, what people wrote it off because of. But in the end, like, this game is fantastic. It's a lot of fun to play. I'm sure you hear the music, so you know that this is a you know that it's very well crafted. The Final Fantasy II remakes, the enhanced remakes, are really good. Like, I highly recommend checking out the GBA version or the PSP version. It came out on the 3DS Virtual Console, but only in Japan, which was a super big bummer. I checked out, you know, I tried to buy this game on the Switch, but none of the, I guess, pre-Final Fantasy VII games are on the Switch, which is huge. It's a huge, it's a disappointment. That's what it is. Wish it was on there. And I wish we had it for the 3DS. I just wish I could get it somewhere else other than Game Boy Advance. I realize it's on the phone, but I don't like playing long-term games like this on the phone. I feel weird about it, because what if I get a phone call? What if something like memory-intensive happens and my game crashes or something? It's just, it worries me, and I don't like doing it. Yep. Anyway, so that's the game. Thank you for watching. I would love to hear your comments about this game below, and you're welcome to tell me how wrong I am. That's totally fine. Maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome that I like this game so much because it took me like 40 hours to finish it. Maybe it's something else. I don't really know. I do know that I'm glad that I played this game after Final Fantasy I. I don't think I would have the patience for this game after Final Fantasy IV. Like, Final Fantasy IV is such a fast-paced game in comparison to this one, and this one was a very slow-paced. It felt a little bit more like Final Fantasy I in that, well, not like Final Fantasy I. It was a breath of fresh air from Final Fantasy I in a way, because you had like real quests. It wasn't just you wandering around and talking to people, and people suddenly saying stuff like, "Oh, well, there's a legend of a king in the keep," and you thinking, okay, is this lore? Are you trying to decide, you know, is this lore or is this part of the quest? Then going over there and they're like, well, I need this thing. And you're like, well, I don't know where to get it. And just kind of, you know, being lost in the game. You're not as lost in this game. Typically, like the strategy is you come back to Altair or Finn and you talk to the princess or the king, and they give you the princess or the king who are heading the rebellion, and they give you information on what to do next. Well, bye until next time. I don't think I'll be doing any of these reviews for FF3 or 1 or 4, any of these, but it was still fun talking about this wonderful game.